that you've written. So that brings me on to my experience and my new methodology of working with old code bases or someone else's code base that is a huge code base. I mean, and this isn't right, but one of the scripts here, I'm on line 6,500 on just one of the scripts. That isn't right because it's not object orientated, it's not split out. You know, classes don't have separate areas of concern, which is not good. It makes it harder to read. You can't compare documents side by side, but I can't refactor that entire thing. It'd be quicker to start again, I possibly. So it is what it is. So one thing to do, and I've done a lot, is to use breakpoints a lot more before doing anything else and trying to understand it in any other way. I think using breakpoints is the quickest thing to do to understand something. And an extra thing I found is the stack trace. If you're breakpointing through and you know a function's being called, you're like, okay, great. So I know that what comes before this? What's the thing directly before this function that gets called? Because I know this function gets called, but I don't know what's before it. So with breakpointing, you have to kind of like say you've got a button in game that you click, and that button then fires off a piece of the code. You know where that piece of the code is because on that button you have a method to invoke, like you've got a link to a function in the script from the Unity inspector. So you can read it out and you can copy what the function is and find it in the code by pressing Control F in Visual Studio, and then you can go to that section of code. Then you know that that's been called. You can put a breakpoint there, and you can attach Visual Studio to Unity, click play, fire off that button by clicking on it, and then you'll see it activates, goes to that place in code. Once you've got that, you're like, okay, great, but what goes before this? There might be a variable inside that bit of code that is set somewhere else, but you don't want it to be set, or you want to be able to change. You want to know what's going on before. So I found out there's something called I thought, isn't that the call stack? Maybe I could look at the call stack, and the previous one will be in there, and it was, and it is. So that's something really useful that I found. So I'll just talk. I'll do a little example here with. Let's just take a bit of the code. Let's make a new script and say example, and let's put this in the London level. Let's just create empty game object, put that in London, open it up, and you see we've got example here, right? So what we want is void first function, and then this will call the second function. So second function. So all we're going to have is we're going to have both of these functions call, just basically say what they are, and first function. So this will then call the second. So this will call the second function. The first function will call the second function. Save that. Let's put a breakpoint here and say, and then we'll attach it to Unity. Then we'll go into Unity. Then we'll click play. We need a console view after Unity's finished compiling. Taking a long time to compile. Okay, so that's done. Let's take console over here, so we can see that. Click play. And breakpoint is attached, so hang on a sec, we're not even we're not even calling we need to call from start. Okay, I need to stop that. So start first function. Right, so we know at the start it's going to call that the first function, and that first function is going to go and call the second function after printing first function. So let's just have that run. Right, you see first function's called, then second function's called. So that's fine, you know, first function, then second function. We haven't attached that to Unity. Let's attach to Unity. Let's go back to Unity and replay this. And it's finished. Long compile time. Okay, so go into it, and now Visual Studio should pop up. There we go, and we know that we're in this function. So we know that's been called, and but we want to know what came before it. What was the first thing? We know first functions come before it, but we want to know how to find out when we don't know what came before it. So there's this thing called the call stack at the bottom. I think you can do window or view call stack, might be there somewhere. Call hierarchy. Anyway, call stack's normally at the bottom. I'm sure you can Google how to do it. So if it's not there, so void example second function. So first function, you can see just before it, this first function was called. So this bit. So that's where it came from, which is extremely helpful. And what came before that is start. So you can see what steps were taken to get to the actual function that you're on, which is quite interesting. I didn't actually know that. Hands up, I didn't know that. So I now know it. It's great. Makes things a lot easier than trying to find it another way. So yeah, that's that. I hope that helps you guys.